You think you know your son until he destroys you in front of everyone. That's what ran through my mind as I stood frozen at my son Carlos's wedding, watching him pull out his phone. The recording he was about to play would change everything, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The morning had started with such promise. Maria, I told myself, today your only child gets married, be happy. The venue was beautiful, white roses everywhere, and 200 guests filling the garden. Carlos looked handsome in his navy suit, though he wouldn't meet my eyes when I adjusted his boutonniere. His bride Rachel stood with her mother, my new counterpart in this family merger. Rachel's mother, Patricia, had always been cold to me, but today she seemed different, calculating. When she grabbed my arm during the cocktail hour and whispered, "I'm going to destroy you," while maintaining her practiced smile for the photographers, my blood chilled. "Excuse me," I whispered back, but she was already gliding away to greet other guests. The ceremony began, and I sat in the front row where mothers belong. The officiant smiled warmly, beginning the traditional words. That's when Carlos reached into his jacket. Instead of wedding rings, he pulled out his phone. Before we continue, Carlos announced to the stunned congregation, "There's something everyone needs to know about my mother." The recording began to play. My voice filled the garden speakers, clear and damning. "Carlos is weak, just like his father was. Thank God Rachel's too stupid to see it. Once they're married, I'll make sure she knows who really runs this family." I had never said those words. Never. Not once had I spoken about Rachel that way, or my son, or my late husband Diego, who died 3 years ago, but it was my voice, perfectly captured, every inflection mine. The guests gasped. Rachel's face crumbled into practiced devastation. Patricia took the microphone from the officiant. "I'm so sorry everyone has to witness this," Patricia said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "We discovered these recordings last week. There's more." Carlos tapped his phone again. Another recording. "The prenup is brilliant. Rachel won't get a penny when Carlos inevitably fails. I've made sure of that with my lawyer. The boy can barely tie his shoes without me." My legs nearly gave out. I gripped the chair in front of me, searching my son's face for any sign of doubt. There was none. He looked at me with such contempt, such conviction. How long had they been planning this? "Carlos," I managed to say, my voice cracking. "You know I never." "Stop lying, Mom." His voice was ice. "We have hours of recordings." Hours? How was that possible? I thought about every conversation I'd had in the past months. Phone calls with friends, discussions with my lawyer about my will, talks with my therapist about grief. What had they done? How had they twisted my words into this weapon? Patricia gestured to someone in the back. 2 police officers entered the garden. My heart hammered against my ribs. "We've filed a restraining order," Patricia announced to the crowd. "This woman has been harassing our family, threatening us, attempting to sabotage this wedding. We have evidence of financial manipulation and elder abuse against Carlos's late father." Elder abuse? Diego had died of cancer. I'd cared for him every single day of his illness, sleeping in hospital chairs, managing medications, holding his hand through chemo. The accusation was so vicious I couldn't breathe. Rachel stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. Such a performance. "I tried so hard to win her approval," she sobbed. "But the things she said about me, about my family, we found out she even hired someone to investigate us." That was a lie, wrapped in a tiny truth. Yes, I'd hired a private investigator, but only after Patricia had started showing up at my house unexpectedly, after strange charges appeared on Carlos's credit cards, after he began pulling away from me. The investigator found nothing concrete, just suspicious patterns. The flash drive Rachel now held up gleamed in the afternoon sun. "Everything is documented here," she announced. Every threat, every manipulative conversation, every lie she told to turn Carlos against me. I watched my son stand there, letting them do this. The boy I'd raised alone after Diego died, who I'd supported through college, whose dreams I'd funded, whose mistakes I'd forgiven countless times. He stood there like a stranger, wearing my son's face. "Ladies and gentlemen," the officiant said nervously, "perhaps we should pause the ceremony." "No," Carlos said firmly. "We're getting married. My mother is leaving." The police officers approached me. One of them, a young woman with sympathetic eyes, spoke quietly. "Ma'am, we need you to leave the premises. There's a temporary restraining order in effect." Based on what? I asked, finding my voice. Those recordings are fake. They're edited, manipulated. Ma'am, please don't make this harder. I looked around at the guests. Some seemed shocked, others confused, but many were already believing it. Why wouldn't they? The evidence seemed overwhelming. Patricia had orchestrated this perfectly, turning my son's wedding into a public execution of my character. My sister Isabella pushed through the crowd. This is insane. Maria would never— Please don't defend her, Carlos said coldly. You don't know what we've been through, the manipulation, the control. She threatened to cut me off if I married Rachel. She said she'd rather see me dead than married to her. Another lie. I'd had concerns about Rachel, yes, but I'd never threatened Carlos. I'd expressed my worry that he was moving too fast, that Rachel's family seemed overly interested in our finances. Normal motherly concerns that Patricia had somehow twisted into something monstrous. The investigators had warned me something was off about Patricia's past. 3 previous marriages, all ending with her significantly wealthier. But without proof, what could I do? And Carlos was so in love, so blind. I'll go, I said quietly, dignity being all I had left. But Carlos, someday you'll know the truth. The truth? Patricia laughed. Actually laughed. The truth is that you're a controlling, manipulative woman who couldn't let her son grow up. The truth is that you tried to destroy this relationship from day one. She pulled out her own phone, scrolling through what appeared to be text messages. Should I read the messages you sent about me? About how I'm a gold digger, how I'm turning your son against you, how you'd do anything to stop this wedding. I hadn't sent those messages. I didn't even have Patricia's phone number. But on the screen, there they were, from my number, with my name, timestamps that seemed real. The technical sophistication of this conspiracy was staggering. They hadn't just recorded and edited audio, they'd created an entire false digital trail. My tech-savvy son would know exactly how to do this. He'd worked in cybersecurity before Patricia convinced him to quit and join her family's business. As the police escorted me toward the parking lot, I heard the ceremony continue behind me. The officiant's voice carried across the garden. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. My son was getting married, while I was being erased from his life. Every photo would show his mother's absence, every memory would be poisoned by this moment. In my car, hands shaking too badly to start the engine, I called my lawyer. Richard answered on the second ring. Maria, aren't you at Carlos's wedding? Richard, I need your help. They've fabricated evidence against me. Audio recordings, text messages, everything. They're saying I abused Diego, that I threatened them. Slow down. Who's they? Patricia, Rachel's mother, and Carlos. Carlos is part of it. Silence on the other end. Then, Maria, I got a call an hour ago from Patricia's attorney. They're seeking a permanent restraining order and filing charges for harassment and fraud. They claim you've been siphoning money from Carlos's trust fund. What trust fund? There is no trust fund. According to their documents, Diego set one up before he died, and you've been illegally accessing it. My husband Diego had left everything to me, with the understanding I'd take care of Carlos. There was no secret trust fund, but if they could fake recordings and messages, why not financial documents too? Richard, none of this is real. It's all fabricated. I believe you, but Maria, the evidence they've provided looks very convincing. We need to meet immediately. I drove to Richard's office in a haze. The streets blurred through my tears, not from sadness, but from rage. They'd planned this so carefully, choosing the most public moment possible to destroy me. At the office, Richard spread out the documents Patricia's lawyer had sent, financial records showing a trust fund I'd never seen, recordings transcribed into neat pages, text messages printed and highlighted. The volume was overwhelming. This is sophisticated, Richard said grimly. Too sophisticated for amateurs. They've had help. Can we prove it's fake? Eventually, maybe, but Maria, court cases take months, sometimes years. In the meantime, you can't contact Carlos, can't go within 500 feet of him or his new family. New family. The words stung. I was being surgically removed from my son's life, replaced by Patricia's toxic influence. There's more, Richard continued reluctantly. They're claiming you have dementia, that Diego noticed signs before he died, that your behavior has been increasingly erratic. Dementia? I laughed bitterly. I'm 52 years old, Richard. I run a business, manage my own finances. I know, but they have a doctor's statement. What doctor? I haven't seen any doctor about memory issues. Richard showed me the letterhead. Dr. Martin Reeves, a psychiatrist I'd never heard of. The statement described symptoms I didn't have, appointments I'd never attended. This Dr. Reeves is Patricia's cousin, I said, recognizing the last name. I remember now the investigator mentioned him. He lost his license in Colorado for insurance fraud, but apparently still practices here. Can you prove that? The investigator has the records. But Patricia knew I'd hired him. What if they got to him first? What if they paid him off? Richard made notes. We'll subpoena his records, but Maria, I need to ask, is there anything at all, that they could use against you? Any arguments with Carlos that were recorded? Any texts that could be misinterpreted? I thought carefully. Carlos and I argued about the wedding costs. I thought Patricia should contribute more since she insisted on such an elaborate affair. And yes, I expressed concerns about Rachel to my friends. But nothing like what they're claiming. They've likely taken real conversations and altered them, mixed truth with lies. It's harder to disprove. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister. The wedding is over. Carlos gave a speech about breaking free from toxic relationships and thanked Patricia for saving him. I'm so sorry. I showed Richard the message. He winced. Maria, we need to go on the offensive. Hire a forensic audio expert to analyze those recordings. Get your own doctor to refute the dementia claims. Document everything you remember about your interactions with Patricia and Rachel. What about Carlos? How do I reach my son? You don't. Not directly. Any contact now would violate the restraining order and make things worse. The truth of my situation crashed over me. My son was gone, not dead, but lost to me completely. Patricia had won. She'd taken him as surely as if she'd kidnapped him, but he'd gone willingly. I spent the next week in a fog. Friends called, confused by rumors spreading from the wedding. Some believed me, others grew distant. Patricia's campaign continued even after the wedding. Social media posts about surviving a toxic mother-in-law, with comments from Rachel about her trauma and Carlos's brave escape from my abuse. The forensic expert Richard hired was expensive, but thorough. She analyzed the recordings and found clear evidence of manipulation, splice marks, frequency inconsistencies, words clipped from different conversations and reassembled. But Patricia's expert submitted a report saying the opposite. It becomes a battle of experts, Richard explained. Judges don't always understand the technology. They see two conflicting reports and often side with whoever seems more credible. Or whoever got their story out first, I added bitterly. My business began to suffer. Clients had heard about the wedding incident. Some pulled their accounts, not wanting to be associated with scandal. Patricia had thought of everything, destroying not just my relationship with Carlos, but my entire life. 2 weeks after the wedding, I was grocery shopping when I saw them, Carlos and Rachel, picking out wine, laughing at something on Rachel's phone. My son looked happy, relaxed, free. I stood frozen in the aisle, watching them through the shelves. Every instinct screamed to go to him, to grab his shoulders and make him see the truth. But the restraining order was a wall between us. Rachel saw me first. Her expression shifted to fear, performed fear. She grabbed Carlos's arm, pointing in my direction. Carlos looked up, and for just a moment I saw something in his eyes. Doubt? Regret? But then his face hardened. He pulled out his phone, and I knew he was calling the police. I left my cart and walked quickly to my car. As I drove away, I saw the police cruiser pulling into the parking lot. That night, Richard called. They're claiming you violated the restraining order, that you followed them to the store. I was shopping. It's my neighborhood grocery store. I've shopped there for 20 years. Doesn't matter. You were within 500 feet. The judge extended the restraining order and added a GPS monitoring requirement. You'll have to wear an ankle bracelet, Maria. An ankle bracelet. Like a criminal, for the crime of loving my son and trying to protect him from predators. The investigator I'd hired finally called back. He'd been in the hospital, a suspicious car accident the day before the wedding. His office had been burglarized, his computer stolen, all his research on Patricia was gone. But I keep backups, he said. Off-site, encrypted. Patricia Williams isn't even her real name. She's Patricia Chen, originally from Seattle. She's done this before. Maria, 3 times. Each time she targets a widow or widower with an adult child, turns the child against the parent, and takes control of the assets. We can expose her. With what proof? My files show patterns, but nothing illegal. She's too smart for that. And now with this restraining order against you, anything you say looks like the ravings of a bitter mother-in-law. He was right. Patricia had positioned herself perfectly. The victim, protecting her new son-in-law from his deranged mother. The media loved stories like this. I'd already seen 2 blog posts about the wedding day disaster with quotes from anonymous guests who were definitely Patricia's friends. Months passed. The legal bills mounted. Richard filed motion after motion, but Patricia's lawyers blocked everything. They requested delays, submitted new evidence, and buried us in paperwork. It was a war of attrition, and Patricia had deeper pockets. Carlos had moved into Patricia's house. His social media, which I could only view through friends' accounts, showed a new life, vacations, dinner parties, a new job at Patricia's company. He looked successful, but also different, thinner. His smile never quite reached his eyes. My sister Isabella remained my lifeline. She'd never doubted me, had seen Patricia's calculating nature from the start. She isolated him, Isabella said, during one of our coffee meetings. Classic manipulation. Turn him against his support system, make him dependent on her. But why? What does she gain? Everything. Carlos inherits everything from you eventually. And if something happens to you, the thought chilled me. I'd already changed my will, leaving everything to charity instead of Carlos. But Patricia didn't know that. Or did she? The forensic accountant Richard hired discovered something interesting. 3 large transfers from Carlos's accounts to accounts in Patricia's name, all after the wedding. Carlos was funding his own manipulation. We could claim undue influence, Richard suggested. Show that Patricia and Rachel are controlling him, taking his money. He'll say he gave it freely. Maybe, but it establishes a pattern. 6 months after the wedding, I got an unexpected call. Rachel's father, Patricia's 3rd husband. Mrs. Rodriguez, my name is David Chen. I think we need to talk. We met at a restaurant 2 towns over, both of us nervous about being seen. David looked tired, older than his 60 years. Patricia destroyed my life too, he began. But by the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. She'd turned Rachel against me completely. Rachel is your biological daughter? No. Patricia had Rachel from her 2nd marriage, but I raised her from age 10. I loved that girl, like my own. Then Patricia decided I'd outlived my usefulness. David's story was eerily familiar. The gradual isolation, the fabricated evidence, the public humiliation. Patricia had accused him of abuse, produced recordings, and convinced Rachel to testify against him. I lost everything in the divorce, but worse, I lost Rachel. She genuinely believes I'm a monster. Do you think Rachel knows about the recordings being fake? David shrugged. Maybe she does, maybe she doesn't. Patricia's raised her to see manipulation as normal. Rachel probably thinks this is just how you handle problems. Would you testify? Tell the court what Patricia did to you. I have a restraining order too. If I speak publicly about Patricia or Rachel, I go to jail. She thought of everything. Another dead end. Patricia had practiced this routine, perfected it. I was just her latest victim. But David had brought something, a flash drive, which he slid across the table. I hired someone to recover deleted files from an old computer Patricia left behind. There's not much, but there are some audio editing programs, templates for documents. Maybe your lawyer can use it. It was slim hope, but hope nonetheless. Richard was excited by the flash drive's contents. This shows capability and intent. We can demonstrate that Patricia has the technical ability to create these fake recordings. The court date for the permanent restraining order arrived. I sat in the courtroom, watching my son enter with Patricia and Rachel. Carlos wouldn't look at me. He'd lost weight, his suit hanging loose on his frame. Patricia's lawyer presented their case with theatrical flair. The recordings played through the courtroom speakers, my supposed voice saying horrible things. The judge, an older man with a stern face, listened intently. Then came the testimony. Rachel cried on cue, describing my campaign of terror against her. Patricia detailed my obsessive behavior and deteriorating mental state, but it was Carlos's testimony that broke me. My mother has always been controlling, he said, his voice flat, rehearsed. After my father died, it got worse. She couldn't accept that I'd grown up, that I'd found love. She tried to sabotage my relationship from the beginning. Lie after lie poured from his mouth, stories twisted from innocent memories. The time I'd questioned a large charge on his credit card became me financially controlling him. My concern, when he'd quit his job, became trying to sabotage his career. When Richard cross-examined him, Carlos had an answer for everything. Too smooth, too prepared, no hesitation, no emotion. It was like watching an actor, not my son. Richard presented our evidence. The forensic analysis showing the recordings were edited. David's flash drive, demonstrating Patricia's technical capabilities, the pattern of Patricia's previous marriages. Patricia's lawyer objected to almost everything. Hearsay, irrelevant, prejudicial. The judge sustained most of the objections. Your Honor, Richard argued, we're showing a clear pattern of behavior. Mrs. Williams has done this before. Allegedly, Patricia's lawyer interrupted. There's no proof of any wrongdoing in Mrs. Williams's previous relationships. The judge deliberated for only an hour. The restraining order was made permanent. I couldn't contact Carlos for 5 years. Additionally, I was ordered to undergo psychiatric evaluation for the safety of all parties involved. As we left the courthouse, I saw Patricia smile. Not a victory smile, but a cold, satisfied expression. She'd won this round. Carlos walked past me, like I didn't exist. The psychiatric evaluation was humiliating but necessary. Dr. Sarah Kim, the court-appointed psychiatrist, was thorough and fair. After multiple sessions, she submitted her report. No signs of dementia, no personality disorders, no dangerous tendencies, just a mother dealing with profound loss and grief. This report helps, Richard said. It contradicts their claims about your mental state. But the damage was done. The restraining order stood. Carlos was gone. A year passed. I rebuilt my life slowly. Therapy helped. I learned to live with the grief, the anger, the bewilderment. How had my son become a weapon against me? How had love been twisted into something so cruel? Then came the call that changed everything. It was Rachel, her voice barely a whisper. Mrs. Rodriguez, please don't hang up. I'm not supposed to be calling you. My heart raced. Rachel? I need help. Carlos, something's wrong with Carlos. Is he hurt? No, not physically, but he's not eating, not sleeping. He found something. Files on Patricia's computer. He knows about the recordings now, knows they were fake. The room spun. He knows. He's been locked in our bedroom for 2 days. Patricia's threatening to have him committed if he doesn't come out. She says he's having a psychotic break. Of course, Patricia's next move. If Carlos turned against her, she'd have him declared incompetent, take control of his finances, through Rachel. The pattern continuing. Why are you calling me? Because I'm scared. I knew about the recordings. I knew they were fake. Mom told me it was the only way to free Carlos from you. But seeing what it's done to him, I can't watch this anymore. Where are you? At home, Patricia's house. Please, can you help? Every instinct screamed danger. This could be another trap, but it was also perhaps my only chance. I can't come there. The restraining order. I know, but maybe if Carlos knew you'd forgive him. Forgive him. The words stuck in my throat. My son had destroyed my life, believed horrible lies about me, stood by while I was humiliated, but he was also my child, lost and manipulated. Tell him to call Richard, my lawyer. If he wants help, truly wants help, that's the only safe way. Rachel hung up. I called Richard immediately, explained the situation. He was skeptical. It could be a setup. Patricia could be trying to get you to violate the restraining order. I know, but what if it's real? What if Carlos finally sees the truth? 2 days later, Richard's phone rang. It was Carlos. The call lasted 3 hours. Carlos sobbing through most of it. He'd found Patricia's project files, recordings of my voice from voicemails and conversations, cut into pieces, reassembled, documents with forged signatures. Plans written out, dated before he'd even met Rachel. He wants to recant his testimony, Richard told me. He wants to expose Patricia. Can he? It's complicated. He was part of the conspiracy. Even if he didn't know the evidence was fake, he could face charges himself. I didn't care about charges or vindication anymore. I just wanted my son back. The next weeks were a legal whirlwind. Carlos left Patricia's house, staying with friends. Rachel filed for divorce. Patricia fought back viciously, claiming Carlos was mentally ill, that I'd somehow brainwashed him from a distance. But Carlos had evidence now. He'd copied Patricia's files, recorded her threatening him when he confronted her. The house of cards was collapsing. The day the restraining order was lifted, Carlos came to see me. He stood on my doorstep, hollow-eyed and trembling. "Mom," he began, then broke down completely. I held my son while he sobbed apologies, explanations, self-recriminations. Patricia had been so convincing, so methodical. She'd shown him evidence of my supposed crimes, slowly building his doubt over months. She'd isolated him from friends who questioned her. She'd made him financially dependent on her. "I believed her," he kept saying. "I believed every word. How could I be so stupid?" "You were in love," I said. Though the words burned, "you trusted the wrong people." Recovery wasn't instant. Trust, once shattered, doesn't magically restore. Carlos and I went to therapy together, unpacking the manipulation, the betrayal, the pain on both sides. He'd been a victim, yes, but also a participant in my destruction. Patricia faced charges eventually: fraud, forgery, conspiracy, but she was clever. Most of the evidence was circumstantial. She got 2 years probation and a fine, a slap on the wrist for destroying multiple lives. Rachel disappeared after the divorce, probably to help Patricia find her next victims. The cycle would continue elsewhere. Carlos struggled with guilt that therapy couldn't quite ease. He'd lost his job, his savings, his sense of self. The confident young man who'd stood at that altar was gone, replaced by someone more cautious, more fragile. "Can you ever really forgive me?" he asked one day, 6 months after the restraining order was lifted. I thought about that morning at his wedding, the moment he'd pulled out his phone and chosen to destroy me. I thought about the months of isolation, the humiliation, the financial ruin, but I also thought about the 25 years before that, raising him, loving him, being his mother. "I'm trying," I said honestly. "Every day I'm trying." We sat in my living room, the same room where I'd once imagined his wedding photos would hang. Instead, the walls were bare, waiting for new memories to fill them. Patricia had taken so much from us: trust, time, innocence, but she hadn't taken everything. "What she did to us was evil," Carlos said quietly. "But what I did to you, Mom, I don't know how to live with it." "Then don't," I said. "Don't live with it. Learn from it. Grow from it. Make sure it never happens again, to anyone." He nodded, wiping his eyes. We were both crying now, grieving the relationship we'd lost, and carefully building something new. Not the same as before. That was impossible, but maybe, eventually, something stronger. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, you know the scar never fully heals. You just learn to live with it, to build around it. Carlos and I were building now, brick by brick, conversation by conversation. The wedding that had destroyed us was 3 years ago now. I still have nightmares about it sometimes, standing there while my son played those recordings, feeling my world collapse. But I also remember the day he came back, broken, but finally free from Patricia's web. Some days I'm angry, some days I'm sad, most days I'm just grateful he survived, that we both did. Patricia had tried to destroy us, but we were still here, changed, damaged, but not destroyed. That's what I hold on to when the memories overwhelm me. We survived, despite everything, we survived.